This is She's Making Something, and my daughter is having an Arctic animal party for her birthday. Any Arctic themed party needs a nice wintry cake, and so I made this one featuring my daughter's favorite animal, the Arctic fox, for her party. If you want to see some other things I made or take a tour of the party setup, head over to my channel or check out the description. So go ahead, hit that like button, and follow along as I make this adorable Arctic fox cake. So I have a 3-layer 10-inch round cake all crumb coated and ready for decoration. My daughter loves red velvet cake but is not a fan of the traditional cream cheese frosting that usually pairs with it, so I made some Swiss meringue buttercream to go with the red velvet. Using white and blue, I'm going to try and make the sides look similar to an Arctic landscape. So I start by frosting the top of the cake white, and then also the top third of the sides are white as well. Then I use the darker blue for the middle third and then a lighter blue for the bottom with a small white line along the bottom edge. I do not blend these colors together. I actually make sure to give each color a little ledge along the top to give it a clear border. This is the same technique I use for my tall red and gold cake, and I go into more detail in that video, so you can check that out on my channel if you want to know more. Hopefully, once all these layers are on, you can see the impression of a landscape with the white snowy sky, the darker blue mountains or ice in the distance, the lighter blue ice in the midground, and then a snowy line at the bottom for a foreground. Using some more white buttercream, I add a few snowy piles along the back half of my cake, which will help support the ice shards later. Some light blue snowflake sprinkle mix will help define the winter look, spilling over onto the side like snow falling from the sky, and white sanding sugar gives the cake a snowy sparkle. There are lots of other animals in the Arctic besides the gorgeous fox, and my daughter gave me a list of the ones she wants included in her party, so they had to be on the cake too. I rolled out some white fondant very thin, and then used some animal silhouettes that I printed from my computer as templates to cut out the various animal shapes. I have polar bears, Arctic wolves, snowshoe hares, and snowy owls along with her favorite fox. I also made headbands for the kids to wear featuring all these animals, and you can see more on that in the main party video in the description. Once all my animal shapes are cut from the fondant and their edges smoothed out and tidied up, I set them into the soft buttercream and they stick nicely onto the cake. I place some down lower in the foreground and some are higher up in the cake in the background, and suddenly my abstract landscape is full of creatures. The next thing I made for the cake is the ice shards, or sugar glass, which are basically weird shaped lollipops. There are lots of recipes on the internet, but it's sugar, water, and light corn syrup all mixed together and brought to a boil. It has to cook until it reaches 300 degrees, so it will be nice and hard when it cools. As the sugar cooks, it starts to pick up a slight yellow or amber tint, so it's not perfectly clear, but I added a touch of blue food coloring to mine, which mixed into a gorgeous icy teal, and then poured it onto a parchment-lined cookie sheet. It starts out all bubbly from being boiled, but a light stir with a spoon smooths it out to a glass-like finish, and I spread it out a bit more because I wanted it on the thinner side so it would be easier to break apart. I used a toothpick and some more blue coloring to add some pretty swirls while it was still soft. It hardened up after sitting out on the counter for about 2 hours, and then it was a simple matter of picking it up and using my hands to break it into triangle-ish shards. Some bigger, some smaller. I wanted a variation so I can arrange it on the cake exactly the way I wanted. Using my little snow piles that I made earlier as a guide, I arranged my ice shards in a rough semicircle, with the tallest pieces kind of near the center and smaller ones at the edges, but some other ones randomly placed in there to keep it looking natural. It's the same reason some triangles are pointed one way and some are the other way. I don't want it to look too organized. Time for the cute little snowy Arctic fox topper, which is solid fondant, so I made it a few days before to give it time to dry out a little. Using a lot of white, I start by making an ovalish shape about 3 inches long for the body of the fox. That's pretty large, but it's a 10-inch cake and the whole fox is about 5 inches long. One side of the oval gets a little smushed to make a place for the head, which is a rough football shape, making those ends curl up a little and then indenting some room for the eyes while pinching up a nose at the same time. I can see all the wrinkles and folds, and I smooth some of those out later, but I also scratch in some lines of my own to make a subtle fur texture so they don't bother me as much right now. The head is also about 3 inches long from tip to tip, which is a bit oversized just for that cuteness factor. Arctic foxes have much fluffier tails than their counterparts, so it takes up about half the body, and the back end is curved around and blended in. Little feet and paws tucked under that head, and small triangle ears are attached on with some water. My ears are a little thick and too heavy for that water, so I had to prop one up with my roller while it dried. I marked some half-circle closed eyes now because it's easier to smooth out and remark fondant than to wipe off black and repaint it later. The last piece is a tiny rounded triangle for a nose. I used some watered down black food coloring to paint on details like the little nose and inside the eye markings, the tips of the ears, and the end of the tail. I also added tiny eyelashes because the cute factor is just off the charts for me right now. Once I was happy with it, it sat out on the counter for a few days, like I said, to harden a little before I placed it front and center at the top of the cake. I love, love, love this little fox, and my daughter said it was exactly perfect, and her opinion matters most. I finished off the cake with some tall silver and white candles that my daughter picked out at Target. There is the finished cake, all blue and white and sparkly and snowy and adorable, and it was an excellent centerpiece at our party where every kid wanted to try a piece of sugar glass with their slice of cake. Don't forget to head on over to my channel to see what else I put together for her party, but this cake was by far my most favorite thing. This is She's Making Something. Thanks for watching.